There's one thing I learned from nearly a decade in corporate sales leadership that still makes me money every single week. And it's not persuasion, and it's not confidence, and it isn't having the perfect script. It's knowing exactly when to stop talking. Most people lose a sale because they can't tolerate silence. If you ever quoted your price and immediately felt the urge to explain, justify, or discount, this is probably why. If you're new here, I'm Marian. I spent almost a decade in corporate sales leadership at State Farm and Allstate. I was leading teams while carrying my own sales numbers. And during that time, I built a photography business on nights and weekends until it consistently replaced my corporate income. Today, I run that business alongside my consulting practice, and almost everything I teach comes from 15 years of selling high-ticket services in the real world, not just in theory. Okay, so the skill is incredibly simple. You just need to state your price and then stop talking. No nervous laugh, no explaining, no discount, no, but we could also, nothing. We used to joke that the hardest part of sales wasn't asking for the money. It was surviving that silence afterwards. Because those first few seconds feel endless, your brain starts convincing you that something is wrong, but it isn't. Here's what's actually happening. While you're panicking, the client is actually just thinking. They're comparing your offer to their budget. They're deciding whether the problem is worth solving. They're imagining themselves working with you. And that process takes a few seconds. But the moment you interrupt it with like, I know it's a lot, or we could always do a smaller package, literally just because you're nervous, you've started negotiating against yourself and they haven't said a single word. They haven't given you any feedback on what's going on in their brain. They're just sitting there thinking for a little bit. I remember coaching one of my agents years ago. Every time he'd quote a price, he'd lower it in about like 2 seconds. Nobody was asking, nobody was negotiating. He'd just get so uncomfortable and then he'd start discounting himself. So I told him, 1 week, here's one rule. You gotta quote the number, you gotta shut your mouth, and you have to count to 5. Slowly, not like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like that's still 2 seconds. Slowly. But that's all you have to do. Shut your mouth, count to 5. And guess what happened? His close rate improved almost immediately. Obviously, it's not because his offer changed, but it was because he finally gave the people the time to answer. So this still works, and I use this on every one of my consulting calls. I explain what's included, I state the investment, then I wait. And honestly, even after 15 years, it still feels a little bit uncomfortable. I totally have the urge to jump back in because that really doesn't ever disappear. You just learn to not listen to it. Most people lose thousands of dollars without even realizing it. 3 seconds passed, nobody has responded. They panic. And then you start like giving all the extra, like, if budget's an issue, I could take a little off, I could throw this in. And what you've taught your client to do is that now your price isn't actually your price. They just had to wait, and then they got all this extra stuff inside. It also teaches them that you're not really confident in what you're actually selling because you're so quick to undermine yourself. Silence isn't a negotiation tactic. It's literally just the discipline not to negotiate against yourself. So here's what I'd like you to do and how I want you to practice. The next time you have to quote a price, decide before the call that you'll count to 5 in your head. And again, remember, slowly. And you don't want to do it while talking or filling the space because it's not a communication skill. This is an emotional regulation. Out of everything I learned in all this time in corporate sales leadership and working with business owners and running my own business, this is probably the one lesson that's earned me the most money over time. And it's not particularly clever. It's just one of those things that's very hard to do in practice. If you want the entire framework I use for sales conversation from the first question to confidently presenting your offer, that's exactly what I teach inside of Close It. The link is below. And for now, have a great week and I'll see you in the next video.